Welcome back, everyone. In the last video, we were setting up our isUserAuthenticated method. Here, what we're saying is that once we call getCurrentUser, which is our promiseified version of checking if the user is still authenticated, we get the user auth, and if it exists, what we're going to do is recreate that process we had where we checked if the user doc reference exists. If it does, check the snapshot to see if that data is inside of our Firebase. If it is, then we return it. If not, then we generate it. If you remember, this is a method that lives inside of our Firebase utils as createUserDocument from auth. The key difference here is that once we had the user doc reference and we got the user snapshot, and after we generated everything, we return the user doc reference. Instead, we want the user snapshot because the data lives on the snapshot. The document reference is just a pointer to that space where that data could live. We want the snapshot now so that we can get the data and store it inside of our reducer. So here what I'm going to do is bring in that method that we just had, createUserDocument from auth. And I'm also going to make a method now that I will call once we have the user auth object. And all of our sign in, sign up with Google or with email and password are all going to flow through this new Saga. So this Saga, I'm going to call our getSnapshot from user auth. This is going to receive user auth as well as those additional details that we need when we do our sign up. If you remember, createUserDocument from auth also takes in the display name that they fill in during the sign up step. So here inside, we're going to have a try catch block. And what we're going to try to do, again, is essentially figure out if we can get that user snapshot. So here I'm going to say const user snapshot is what I'm going to try and get back from yielding to calling this method create user document from auth, passing it the user auth object as well as additional details. Anywhere you're going to call a function, you want to use the call effect generator. Now, inside of Redux Saga, every single step that yields, you want to be as descriptive as possible. Now, descriptive here essentially means creating an effect for it. That's why these are called effect generators. An effect is essentially a plain object that describes what's trying to happen. So here with call, this is just going to say, hey, I've got some object where the function name is going to be create user document from auth like this. And then it's going to say params are whatever these subsequent are. This might not be the shape, but this just gives you an idea. What this allows us to do is actually make testing easier when we're going to test sagas, but also we're just essentially handing over the execution of this API call or any of this code to our actual generator. And you want to hand over as much to the generator as you can because the generator is going to be the one that can cancel these. But more on that later. The key thing to know is that anywhere you're going to make some kind of call to either a new Saga or to some function method, especially if it's an API call or asynchronous call, use the call effect. So now that we have our user snapshot, let's just console log out user snapshot as well as user snapshot.data. What we also want to do is that if this fails for some reason, we want to yield out that sign in failed method, passing the error down. Similarly, if we fail inside of our isUserAuthenticated, I'm also going to use the same sign in failed method. And now that we have our new generator, let's call this inside of our isUserAuthenticated method. So here we're going to say, once we have this user auth, if it's not null, assuming that they're trying to sign in, then we're going to call our getSnapshot from user auth method that we just made. And we're going to pass it the user auth as the argument. So now we're going to save this. We also need to pass this in as the second argument of our take latest and pass this into our onCheck user session using our call as well. And then we're going to take the user Saga, go into our root Saga, import it, and add it to our root Saga. And finally, what we want to make sure we also do is inside of app.js, where we were mounting before, and we had our initial auth state listener, and then we were testing get current user. We don't need any of this anymore. Instead, all we're doing is triggering our check user session. So that's what we want to dispatch out. So now that we have everything, let's go over the flow of what's going to happen. The app's going to mount. It's going to dispatch check user session. Check user session is our new action type, which we have a Saga that is listening for. Once we hear it, we are going to call isUserAuthenticated, which is going to call our getCurrentUser method. This is that promiseified version of checking if our auth state has changed, i.e. if there is a user auth that still exists. If it does, it's going to take that user auth and it's going to pass it into getSnapshotFromUserAuth. GetSnapshotFromUserAuth is going to use that user auth object to determine if there is a user snapshot for it. If there isn't, it's going to make one. If there is, it won't, but either way we get it back, on which we will console log out to see the data. So let's go back here. And down here, we see that after check user session fires, we're getting our double logs. Here is the data where we see all the fields that we want. But what we don't see is the ID. You'll notice that the ID is actually on the snapshot. This is one of those more annoying parts of Firebase's data where you need to get the ID from either the document reference or the snapshot. So what we have to do in order to actually push this data into our reducer is we will yield out put, and in this put, we're going to say our sign in success, where we're going to pass it an object where ID points to user snapshot.id, and then we'll spread through the rest of our user snapshot.data, like so. And this, if we go back to check now, we see that we get our sign in success from our Saga, and inside of user, current user, this is all of the data that we want. So there we go. Everything's working now. My challenge to you now is to figure out if you can hook up and create the remaining Sagas as well as the corresponding components in order to move all of the sign-in, the sign-up from Google, from email password into our Sagas and flow everything appropriately through our new getSnapshotFromUserAuth Saga, as well as replace the remaining component code with the appropriate action flow. And you may even need to add new action types to get everything to work. But we've essentially learned how to set up most of this code now. It's really just about getting granular about it and practicing. So try it out and then join me in the next video where we will go through everything else together.